This would be huge news in Pac-12 circles.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, the number one sports podcast network out there. Thank you all, especially my everydayers, for helping make that the case. The other side of the scheduling segment I did on Friday, if I could choose where I go every single week, where would I travel to in college football this season? And is Memphis ready to be in the Group of Six playoff hunt under a first-year head coach? That's coming up on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. So, I'm not confident enough, based on the available information, to say that what I am about to discuss is a 100% certainty or that it has been verified across the board and everyone knows this is what it's going to be. Information that stemmed from a Washington State Board of Regents meeting indicates that payments to Pac-12 member schools in the new version of the league could be $13 million per school. Now, financial data can sometimes be tricky, and it can lag. And if this is the actual number, this would be phenomenal news for the first year of the league. When I have broached this subject here on the show over the last several months, based on what I have read and what I have heard, the expectation has been $7 to $10 million range, more than what was being distributed to the Mountain West transfers to this Pac State conference, but still not nearly as much as what you're getting in the Power Four, which is the expectation. Now, there are two financial components of this that are at play. There was another report that was over at Yahoo Sports, amongst other places, that laid out the financial regression that Oregon State and Washington State underwent when the 10 schools left for the three power conferences, Big 10, Big 12, and ACC. And that didn't surprise me in a huge way. Like, yes, there is going to be less money available. Breaking news, when you lose a lot of inventory in the way that you generate revenue. I know that can be surprising to some. Anyway, that didn't shock me in a major way. But if this does wind up being the actual number, and again, I don't know that that is a 100% mortal lock. That would be, because it's per school, not extra that then gets distributed to the 8 schools. If you're talking about $13 million per school from the media rights deal, and look, there are a lot of benefits to the media rights situation that the Pac-12 has negotiated. Their linear TV exposure and the ease with which fans from any time zone across the country or folks on the College Football Playoff Committee are going to be able to watch these games as often as they would like. For people like myself to watch and talk about, that is an absolute win. If that is on the heels of a $13 million per school distribution, that would be a significant leg up. And in the age of revenue sharing and NIL, schools have the discretion to choose what they would do with that money. They could use it to pay players. They could use it. This is a place that I would personally explore, especially at the Group of Six ranks, where there are some players that you are just not going to be able to keep. Damian Martinez back in the day, because other schools are always going to be able to offer more no matter what you put together. John Mateer. If I suddenly had a multi-million-dollar advantage over my peers and I'm running an athletic department, I am looking very heavily at doing whatever I can to keep not just head coaches, but assistant coaches that are vital to the success of a particular operation when success shows up on the field. Now, you can't stop coordinators from going out to become head coaches because that's a completely different opportunity. But let's say, just as an example, up in, again, just an example, don't freak out in the comments, just an example here. Let's say Trent Bray just absolutely crushes it up at Washington State this year as Kirby Moore's defensive coordinator. And I think that is indeed a quality hire. Guy knows the area, guy knows defense. He's not a group of 6 Power 4 caliber head coach, but you know what? Maybe there is an FCS program that is entertaining the idea of bringing him on as their head coach. Or maybe there's another group of 6 school that wants to hire him as their defense coordinator, and they're willing to up his salary, and that's one of the reasons he's going to consider that opportunity. If you have a multi-million-dollar advantage, and we're talking in the 7, 8-ish sort of range, again, depending on how these figures actually work out, I would commit that to coaching staffs and assistant pools so that you can either keep the guys that are really good that you want to keep as a part of your program for as long as you can, or if a guy does move on to take another opportunity, you can increase the likelihood you go out and find someone who's not going to be a significant downgrade that can be at the same or at a higher level than what you were getting before. So if this really does wind up being the case, I'm trying to find out more about where or how much confidence we should have in that particular number. But if that is where it actually is, and there is an advantage of at least $5 million or more for every Pac-12 member, then schools are not going to in any way, shape, or form have regret about what they were leaving behind, number one. And number two, it is going to further embolden the possibility of the Pac-12 being the premier group of 6 conference in college football on an annual basis. And yes, that includes the American, a league that I think is really good and has a bunch of great brands and has undergone a lot of coaching turnovers this offseason that they have to overcome, and we'll see if they have figured out how to replace all of those hires, because a lot of those guys got hired elsewhere for a reason. They were very good. And I think something similar could be happening in the Pac-12 right now with the depth of coaching talent that is in that league. But that, of course, has to be backed up with the actual results on the field. So, if it is actually $13 million, yes, that can be a game-changing amount if that's how much is going out per school in the New World Pac-12. Leave your thoughts in the YouTube comments below. Hit me up on Twitter, however you want to get in touch. If I could go with no restrictions to any college football game every week, here's where I would go. First, this episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here, and every possession matters. If you're looking to get even closer to the action, FanDuel has a great offer to get you started. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. That's right. Turn $5 into $150 in bonus bets just for getting started. You'll like using FanDuel during the playoffs because everything you need is right there in one place. You can check stats, trends, and matchups before making your picks, which makes the whole experience feel a lot more informed. Whether you're looking at player props or just following your favorite stars, it adds another level of excitement to every game. It's really easy to navigate when you get into the app, and it makes playoff basketball even more engaging from start to finish. And if you wanted to bet anything college football related because you think you know better than the rest of the public or the odds makers themselves, FanDuel's got you covered. Win totals for every Power 4 team, conference title odds, national title odds, individual games. There are lines out there that can be wagered upon right here, right now for the 2026 season. All that and more is over at FanDuel. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel.com, that's the place to go. FanDuel, play your game. Thank you for making this show your first listen or your first view every day. If you tune into every episode and want to level up, check out the Locked On Everydayer Club. For $5 a month or $50 for the year, you can get access to ad-free audio on podcasts, access into our members-only Discord server, chat with myself and other hosts, and other perks as well. Click the link in the description of this episode and join the Locked On Everydayer Club today. So on the Friday edition of this show, I was sent a mailbag question, which you can always send me at LockedOn_CFB or at SMcLaughlin_CFB as well. Either one works. And the question was, if you could go to a game each week, but not repeat the same team, not just location, but the same team, where would you go? Check out Friday's show to hear that exercise. It got me thinking, though. If I had no restrictions whatsoever, and I didn't have a play-by-play job, and I could go to any college football game I wanted every week, and I was no longer an Oregon fan, then what would I do? And so I went through and I laid it out. There were a couple of crossovers between the two schedules, but there were plenty of new ones. So, no rules. Week 0, I'm still going to North Carolina at TCU. Year 2 of Bill Belichick, Sonny Dykes at TCU, usually a pretty darn good environment, should be a good competitive football game. That one was unchanged. The difference between the two selections, though, for me, from Friday to today, began in Week 1. Week 1, I'm going to Clemson LSU. That's where College Game Day is going. It is the place that I would most like to go in Week 1. It's not a particularly strong slate. Now, with the rules, because there's a game on September 19th that I have to be at if I have my choice every single week, I couldn't include LSU. And so, of course, that changes when you eliminate that. Also worth noting, sneaky good game. On Sunday, September 6th, Louisville at Ole Miss. Labor Day weekend. NFL hasn't gotten going yet. Louisville with Lincoln Keenholz probably. Ohio State transfer at quarterback. I'll be talking about another one of those later on today's show. Going down to Ole Miss, be careful, Pete Golding. Be careful. Jeff Brom, ball coach. Absolute ball coach. Week 2, unchanged, Ohio State at Texas. Week 3, unchanged, LSU at Ole Miss. Need I say more? The Oxford Police Department has already sent out a hilarious tweet on the matter. What more do you need to know about how hyped that game is going to be? Whew, boy, I cannot wait. Week 4, also unchanged, Oklahoma at Georgia. 2 playoff teams from the SEC last year, and a measuring stick opportunity for Oklahoma. Can you go on the road to Athens and put up an offensive performance that looks like you actually practiced that side of the ball during the week? Because there were times last year where it looked like they were just showing up and doing some schoolyard BS, as Paul Crewe once said in The Longest Yard, which is one of my favorite sports movies of all time. Week 5 also remains unchanged. Miami at Clemson. I will note there's some Friday games in here that if the travel were to be worked out, would be worth going to. And I got to tell you, Penn State at Northwestern on a Friday. I've seen worse Friday night games. That is all I will say. And Penn State fans are looking for revenge at Northwestern. How about that? What a sentence. What a sentence. So, speaking of Penn State, in my original schedule with restrictions, I would go to USC at Penn State. This could be the whiteout game. Boy, it is hard to pass that up. But because I value rivalries above all else, and those are the games that I want to be at because fans have a different edge to them, I'm going Red River. Week 6, Texas, Oklahoma. One of the few neutral site games I am totally okay with. It's one of the most unique environments in college football. Next week, 3rd Saturday in October. That's where I'd have to go, right? Wrong, you are. I am going to the biggest game at LaVell Edwards Stadium probably this century. Notre Dame is going there. In the Pop-Tarts Bowl matchup that should have been, it is now going to be played. Do I expect Notre Dame to win? Yep, I do. Am I always right? Nope, I am not. One of the things that makes this show very fun. That stadium, which is a huge part of my calculation when considering which games I would want to go to on a weekly basis, that stadium is going to be on fire. Metaphorically, it is going to be so loud. I have been there before. It's a beautiful setting. Their game day setup is top tier. If I showed up, I might get on BYU's pregame show. I've done it before. I would love to do it again. Does Bama at Tennessee sound fun? Yeah, I'm far more interested in Notre Dame at BYU. Even though there's a rivalry component there. That one supersedes, which is hard. That's very, very hard because rivalries, as I said, are very high on the priority list. But yeah, I'm not passing on Lavelle Edwards there. Not with the backdrop of what happened last season. Next week, back to the SEC. Texas A&M at Alabama. This is always a great game. You know Bryant Denny will be rocking. I'm passing on Ole Miss at Texas, which I considered here because I will have already been to Texas. Not that there are any rules, but I would want to see, if I were setting my own schedule, as many different stadiums in college football as I can. So Week 8, Texas A&M at Alabama. Week 9. Look, I'll be honest. Though I have been to the stadium before, and it is a nice place to watch a football game as the sun is setting in the distance with the San Gabriel Mountains and whatnot. I hope the fans would turn this into the type of environment it deserves. I think they will. And if they don't, then the story in the crowd will be about the scarlet and gray takeover. Ohio State at USC. Whether or not USC beats Oregon in their Big Ten opener, also at home, whether or not they beat Washington, which I believe is the following week, this will be one of the biggest games of Lincoln Riley's tenure and a true measuring stick opportunity. Because let's say, hypothetically, and they'll be underdogs in all likelihood, let's say they lose to Oregon again. Well, there's no inherent shame in that, regardless of what year you are at as USC's head coach. But if in year 5 you can't beat Oregon and you can't beat Ohio State, suddenly a narrative starts to build, and there would be a good amount of truth to it. So the stakes of that game should be massive, and I trust, even though the LA Coliseum is not always the most rowdy home environment, I am trusting Trojan fans for that game that they would show up, because that'll be good. Next week, right back to the Big 12. There were so many good options in Week 10. Week 10 is a loaded slate. Week 10 is the slate of college football this year. Week 10, November 7th. Mark it on your calendars. Don't do anything else that day. I might call in sick for play-by-play. BYU at Utah is where I'm going. The Holy War, Salt Lake City, Rice-Eccles. I bet you it will be at night. Now, when I was initially going through this lineup of games, which includes Alabama at LSU, Georgia at Ole Miss in a playoff rematch, Oregon at Ohio State, and Miami at Notre Dame, what do you think second place was? Once I'd considered everything, Miami at Notre Dame is actually my second place finisher here. Oregon at Ohio State is not, because I bet you that game is going to be big noon kickoff. And it is a darn shame that Ohio State fans don't get a nighttime environment as often as they deserve. And I bet that game is played at 12 o'clock Eastern. And I would much rather go to a game under the lights. I don't think there is a shot BYU at Utah is played under anything except the blanket of darkness in a cold, brisk Utah sky. It will be under 40 degrees, and it will be smash mouth football. And it will be Morgan Scalley's first chance at home to make his mark as Utah's head coach. Boy, that will be fun. Next week, Ole Miss at Oklahoma. Texas is at LSU that same day. If we hadn't already been to LSU in week 1, that might have been the pick. But I have a lot of love for Oklahoma, a state that I once resided in, and there's a non-zero part of me here that picks this game in this spot because I want to go back to Norman and play the Jimmy Austin OU Golf Club. One of my favorites. Absolutely loved it. Sooner fans, block your ears for this next part. I might go up to Stillwater and play Karsten Creek too. Anyway, next week, you've got a few SEC cupcakes out there. Gross. I thought we got rid of those guys. Come on, be better. Stanford at Cal, I considered. But you know what? I think Washington will be a good team, and the reigning national champs will be in town. As long as Washington is good enough, that environment will be rocking. Can they hang with Indiana? I doubt it. But the environment and the setting, top tier. Absolutely top tier. Which leads me to rivalry week. A lot of options. I considered Washington, Oregon on a personal level. Of course, that's where I'd like to be. But you know what? Michigan, Ohio State, Kyle Whittingham's first opportunity to coach in the game. This man knows rivalry football very well. I've mentioned the Holy War. I also considered Auburn at Alabama. Of course, I don't think Auburn will be on Alabama's level this year. I considered Virginia at Virginia Tech. Two teams that could compete for the ACC championship game this year. Virginia Tech, a lot of people don't know, can be a great environment. And on Friday, I would probably go to Texas at Texas A&M at College Station. Fantastic rivalry. Thank you, Realignment, for bringing that one back. Then I'd get up, actually probably after the game. I'd just travel through the night. I might not sleep, and then I'd get up, go to Michigan at Ohio State. Is it a shame it'll probably be big noon? Yeah, it probably is. So if I had my choice, I would go to North Carolina at TCU, Clemson at LSU, Ohio State at Texas, LSU at Ole Miss, Oklahoma at Georgia, Miami at Clemson, Texas versus Oklahoma, Notre Dame at BYU, Texas A&M at Alabama, Ohio State at USC, BYU at Utah, Ole Miss at Oklahoma, Indiana at Washington, Michigan at Ohio State. Those would be my Saturday games. Keep sending me schedule hypotheticals and questions because I got to tell you, this is becoming my favorite thing that I have done so far this offseason here on the show. So if you have other parameters that you want to hit me with, let's go. Let's go. Fire me up. Memphis should be fired up about their head coach. Are you aware of who has taken over in Memphis, Tennessee? You may be thinking, what? Josh Heupel did? No, that's Knoxville. Come on. But Clark Lee's still at Vanderbilt. No, that's Nashville. Come on. I'm talking about the Memphis Tigers, a football brand that has historically been incredibly strong and relevant. And if there had always been a 12-team playoff, would have made an appearance. They played Penn State in the Cotton Bowl once upon a time. Once upon a time. Why did I say of time? Goodness gracious. What am I? New? Apparently. In the 12-team era, that would have been a college football playoff game. They would have been the G6 representative that year, I believe. And they were in a New Year's Six game. So Memphis has got a new head coach because Ryan Silverfield is now the head coach at Arkansas, taking over the Razorbacks. And who takes over for the Memphis Tigers but Charles Huff? Now, most of you probably don't know that name. This is a guy whose recent coaching career trajectory indicates he is going to be coming to a Power 4 head coaching gig near you. Just keep an eye out, depending on what happens this year. Because entering this 2026 season, Charles Huff is coaching his third team in, wait for it, 3 years. He was at Marshall, where he had a successful run. He went to Southern Miss for one whole season. He turned them around immediately, right away. And that turned into the Memphis job. So he oversaw the transition at Marshall from Conference USA to the Sun Belt, and then changed programs within the league to Southern Miss, which in Sun Belt territory was, I'm sure, a little surprising to plenty of folks. And this past year, he goes 7-5. And you may be wondering, well, why is 7-5 earning him a top-tier group of 6 job like the Memphis Tigers? The year before he arrived to coach the Golden Eagles, Charles Huff inherited a program that went 1-11. So in 1 year, at Brett Favre's alma mater, he went from 1 win to 7 wins, and then said, look at that. The Memphis job is open. And there is no competition. You would rather be at Memphis than at Southern Miss. So across 4 seasons at Marshall, when he had a prolonged tenure, and he's got ties to the Northeast part. He's been at a number of different coaching stops. I would not be surprised if he is an ACC or maybe a Big Ten head coach by, I'll say, 2029. Make that prediction right now. ACC might be more likely, depending on what comes open. Like if Florida State fires Mike Norvell, which I'll talk about more with Brian Smith on tomorrow's show, Brian of Locked On Seminoles fame, of course. If that happens, I bet his name gets thrown out there. I do think he has to prove it a little bit at Memphis before he get one of those jobs, but hey, you never know. So at Marshall, with the Thundering Herd, he went 32-20 across 4 seasons, and in 2024, they were the Sun Belt champions. They went 10-3. After a 9-win regular season, they were 7-1 in conference play. So here is my favorite stat. If Charles Huff takes Memphis to a bowl game this year in 2026, it will be the first time that he has coached a bowl game since 2023. Why, you ask? Because the college football calendar is so dumb, illogical, and busted 7 ways from Saturday that he has made himself a priority target for a bigger, what he perceives as a better job, and then he's not able to stick around to coach that game and finish the season with his guys because he has to get to his new destination. So at Marshall, he said, yep, this was fun, but I'm out. I'm going to Southern Miss. He led them to a bowl game and said, this was fun. I'm out. I'm going to Memphis. And he hit the ground running. So their transfer portal class has, I'll let you guess for just a moment to yourselves. In your car, at the gym, wherever you might be listening to this show. I'll give you 5 seconds. A new coach going to the American, coming from the Sun Belt. How many total transfers do you think he has brought? Not brought with him. I'll give you that number 2. How many has he brought total to his new school? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. If you guessed 53, the price is right. If you guessed 54, sorry, you bust. If you guessed 52, you did very well. If you guessed $1, Bob, you lose. So 53 transfers, 19 of them. For a guy that has not coached at a Power 4 school in quite some time, 19 Power 4 dropdowns coming to Memphis to fill out this roster in the American. All this turnover across the conference. You've got Tulane with a new coach, North Texas with a new coach, and Charles Huff. And in the eyes of advanced metrics, S&P+, Memphis is the number 2 team on paper in the American Conference. They come in at 70th in S&P+, which factors in a variety of components to try and predict how good a team will be. Not perfect, but a starting point for sure, and data-driven. They are trailing only the midshipmen of Navy, who come in 63rd in the American Conference going into this year. 15 players Charles Huff has brought over are from Southern Miss. 15. Of the 53 they have brought in, you talk about a busy offseason and portal cycle, 38 transfers. This is not a Kurt Signetti to James Madison situation exactly. There are some vibes to it, to be sure. You can Google Charles Huff. Dude just wins. At Southern Miss, it didn't take very long. At Marshall, it didn't take very long. He has just won. Now, he goes into the most competitive league that he has been a part of at a time where there's a lot of turnover and change across the conference. And on paper, he seems to have a pretty talented roster. Now, the name you should know here in the quarterback room is Marcus Stokes. In addition to Aaron Noland, he provides an option. I believe Marcus Stokes will wind up being Memphis' starting quarterback. Now, Aaron Noland is a name that many of you might remember. He was committed to Ohio State. He enrolled, was a part of that insanely deep quarterback room. He didn't see the field. He transferred to South Carolina, and now he is at Memphis. That career trajectory reminds me very much of Malachi Nelson, who may very well push Steve Angeli at Syracuse for the starting job going into this year. Nelson was a top quarterback recruit coming out of high school. Some services had him as the number one quarterback. He was at USC. Then he was at Boise State. Then he was at UTEP. When multiple programs that are well run and well respected with coaches who know what they're doing pass on a kid who is super talented coming out of high school, there's probably a reason. He is a ways away from being ready to go. And I don't think Charles Huff wants to come in and play the long game. So that's what I suspect they will do at quarterback. I have not seen an official announcement anywhere. But when you consider a group of 6 contenders for the college football playoff this year, do not overlook the Memphis Tigers. I appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.